Okay, it's Jordan stands alone, and James, I have an eyeball, no mouse. Okay, obvious thing going on this week. Hey, look better now. It's like,
my cam turned off apparently, sorry.
Yeah, you're frozen right now. Can you reboot your cam?
That better?
There we go! Yay!
Hooray for Skype.
On that note, that's like the two big stories right now. It's Skype. It's Microsoft now. And of course Google I/O. But before, I should refresh the title, so it's actually this week's title. Before we get into Google I/O, because that's long, you know, and we're not even going to be able to get into all of it today because there's just so much that was done on it. We're going to just focus on Android this week. Skype, good, bad, concerned, afraid, whatever. On the one hand, I'm with what James was saying before the show. It's an opportunity to try other things. On the other hand, I'm a little irked in some ways by the almost unilateral it's gone Microsoft reaction out of Linux as a whole. I mean, you cannot go in a single open source or Linux forum right now where it is just not full of people going, what's my Skype alternative? How do I set it up? Well, it's like, you know, rather they're switching over to SIP based talks or whatever. Skype in Linux is technically not officially supported by Skype. Overall, it works okay, but it's not official. It's a beta. So there's a real built-in excuse there if the Linux community just kind of overreacts and bails on Skype for Microsoft to go, you know what? Since they don't want it, and it was never really finished, there's no reason to invest any resources in it at all. You know, that you can almost pave that road for them with that reaction. I'm a little concerned about that, but I don't want to make it easy for them to do that. I don't know where y'all stand on that. I mean, are you afraid? Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think?
I am holding out hope that Microsoft is going to pick it up and say, this is a moneymaker. Let's go ahead and unify it, make the same interface across all platforms, desktop platforms, laptop platforms, tablet platforms, and then have a slightly different one for like Android tablets, I guess, and phones.
I have kind of liked that we've been able to avoid having that UI that has taken over Windows, which is now taken over OS X. I never really liked it. I like that Linux isn't using that UI for the most part, but that's me.
There's some functionality that's really missing there.
Thank you. What about you, James?
When I was reading on Ubuntu, one of the comments, or maybe in the article itself, was says the worst thing they could do is basically the same thing that's already happened, which is basically no updates for Skype. But because basically the company that made Skype really didn't do that much for Linux anyway. I mean, they did recently get an update, but they still haven't changed much in years, so it can't get much less. But I don't see Microsoft as explicitly doing something bad, but just letting it, not spending resources on it, I think is possible.
We'll
like
see.
Someday maybe it'll break and they might take months to fix it. That I could see them.
That I could see.
That's the more likely option.
Yeah, that's what I honestly do see happening. Like little things like they'll release an update that breaks it, and they won't be so.
Fix it eventually, but it'll just take months.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of this forced downgrading to get Skype. Fortunately, that's hard to enforce. on Linux, because I have yet to find a Linux distro that doesn't have this option in their repo to go, yeah, I want to roll back to the older one because the new one sucks. I haven't seen a distro that doesn't let you do that. So we'll still have the old one that works, even if they do try and do that. It's going to be interesting. Depending where it goes, we may or may not start listing Linux alternatives. The reality is there's not a good Skype standby. I mean, not
a 100% replacement.
Yeah, I mean, Google Talk is potentially, but there's issues with that. LinPhone's great for making video or audio calls, but there's no chat with it. So, I mean, really, to get everything you get with Skype, you're going to have to, as things stand right now, if Skype really does just go away on Linux, you're going to have to, like, combine service A from over here and service B from... You can get it, but it's not going to be Skype-ish. It'll be an interesting transition. Okay. Ignoring the sound we just heard, and Jordan will be explaining that all. So we just talked about it, but Jordan don't want to talk about it over here, so we want. Moving on to I/O. What did y'all think? Have y'all watched the I/O videos?
I haven't had a chance to yet.
I haven't had a chance either.
Oh boy, I'm the only one who knows what we're talking about. Yay! Well, we'll cover day one, which is largely talking about Android. Google went out and covered what they call momentum, which is, of course, talking about, market share and so on and so forth. It was almost... Yay! It's gonna be one of those shows. It's like, nice to see James's internet's holding out so well. It basically, they were having an almost Apple-ish keynote. They were given OS to the G1. They went over a bunch of specs, pointing out that they have dozens of OEMs and hundreds of carriers and, almost 500,000 developers at this point. One thing that was very different about just the general overtone of I/O versus, because a lot of people are saying the Google I/O conference is such a ripoff of Apple's conference. But there's a definite general difference in the tone in that right from the get-go, are we going to have internet working today, James?
Possibly.
Okay. Turn your video on. We're talking about the fact that Google was being Macish nothing else, saying we're the best because, that's an almost Apple-ish thing to do. But the tone of it was a little different. It was very clear for that 20 minutes. It was basically, yes, we are the best because of all these statistics. However, it's because y'all invested in us. There wasn't an FU nature to it of finding all the statistics. It was almost a thank you very much nature to the statistics, which is, I'm hoping Google at some point 3-5 years down the road doesn't forget that, because if they ever forget that, they're not going to have that community behind them that really makes all of this work. As long as they remember that that's why it works, I think it'll be fine, no matter how big they get in that regard. I know there's a number of people who will disagree with me and will go, oh, they're getting too big, they're going to become evil, they're going to take over everything. As long as they remember that it's the community behind that, not those numbers themselves, I think it's fine. they did give some interesting statistics that basically points out the growth rate of Android is basically doubling every 3 to 5 months at this point. Growing by 100,000 a day in terms of activations every 3 to 5 months. How much longer do we think they can really keep that up before they'll start to plateau?
At some point, they will have to hit a curve.
I mean, there are only so many
people.
There's only so many people. I'm just wondering, like, is that 500,000 a day, 750,000 a day, 2 million a day? It's like, how much longer will it keep? Because pretty much every.
So at some point, it's going to have to be a curve because population growth and decay. Yeah.
Say that again, James. You broke up a little.
Android activation is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It still has room to go up.
I know it has room to go up. I'm just wondering how much more. Because, I mean, literally, every 3 to 5 months, the number of Android things activated a day goes up 100,000. That's, you know...
Let's consider how many hundreds of thousands from Apple there are per day. I mean, unless people are just going round robin, going from Apple to Android and back.
There are some tech extremists, like people who do content like we do, or who are just die-hard geeks with more money than sense, that go out and buy every single thing that comes out. But hey, we don't have the budget. I wish we had the budget for that, but we don't. It's like,
there's a lot of people in the world. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the average user. I think that's the tech enthusiast. I would argue that the people who actually go do that are probably less than 1% of the user base.
I mean, even if people are only buying, hold on. You keep talking. I'm going to do some math. Help me.
He's got to do math. Math is hard.
I know this has failed before, but this is going to be simpler.
Well, the other statistic they brought up, in direct relation to that is they have 200,000 plus apps, which means they actually have a good-sized app point at this point. I'm personally, with a lot of other people, that is not a selling point. That is I can't find applications in the marketplace point. I don't know about either one of you, but I have a real hard time at this point finding, if I'm not looking for it, like, oh, that's a cool app, I should try it out. I have to hear about it from someone else. Like a friend goes, hey, did you try such and such? I'm like, what the hell is such and such? Oh, you gotta try it, man, it's great. Like, that's how I find out there's a cool new app in the Android thing, because there's just too many apps in there now. And when you start getting that many, you wind up with a lot of just junk. That being said, they are definitely, whether it's the word of mouth or it's the curation apps or whatever, they're having the same kind of growth with, like they're having with activations with downloads. It took them 2 years to hit 1 billion. In the next 5 months, they doubled that. They hit 2 billion app downloads. They're at roughly 4.5 billion, averaging 1 billion apps downloaded every 2 months now at this point. Do we think that can keep up at that rate, or do we think that's in the process of plateauing? Or, I mean, they were very careful to, like I said, keep saying, as they were stating all these basically bragging sects, but it's thanks to you developers, we know that, thank you. It's like, I did not realize it had gotten to that rate. I believe the statistics. It's just one of those, I'm not sure how long that can keep up. Some of that has to be being driven by the fact that there's just all these new activations and so on. Do we think that's plateauing? Do we think that's a lopsided statistic? Not to be Android fanboyish, Well,
I'd be curious if it's new app installations or if it's people that have multiple devices that are downloading it multiple times. Or...
See, that's the thing I want to know, because they're now doing this cloud syncing, if I have 4 Android devices and I get an app, does that count as 4 downloads? Because then that statistic is very misleading if that's how it's counted. Because that is how Android works now. If I buy an app or download an app, it goes to all my it's there available for all my Android things. Unless I've turned it off, it just auto downloads. If I have the space, just depends. It would be interesting. I would like to know more about that statistic to honestly have a clue.
Yeah. Statistics, in a lot of ways, are a lot like metrics, that they're not 100% reliable, in my opinion.
No, and that's the thing that does always... This has always bugged me about the thing that Apple does. It's like, at least Google's remembering who they owe all these statistics to, and they're judging these. But it's... When you give statistics without explaining how they're grouped, you know, it's like that old phrase, you can use statistics to prove anything. And I would like to know a lot more about these statistics before I'm just like, okay, what do they really mean? You know, I love Android. I do. I love it. There's a reason I'm using Android, and there's a reason I'm probably never going to throw away my G1 ever. I will upgrade at some point. I'm gonna be upgrading this year, but it has a place in my collection. It's gonna never go away. Okay, moving on to the actual stuff they did. You know,